Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. I'm your host Rick the Barkeep, bringing you episode 185 here at the Tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. So there's been a slight influx of a new type of video on YouTube now. Basically a how I would fix type of YouTube video. The essential premise behind these videos is that they're fans of particular franchises, whether they be movies, video games, television, whatever, and they would assume a role of control, of direct creative control of that particular franchise, and tell you exactly what they would do to make that franchise better, to change problems that they see within it. And it's really a good premise. I've listened to a couple out there. I think Movie Bob's on Batman is an interesting one. Definitely check that one out if you guys haven't seen it. And I thought, hey, I can do this too. I have my own YouTube channel, and I have a franchise that I would definitely like to see some changes made to. So today, I will be going through how I would fix Power Rangers. Now, of course, that title is a little misleading. To fix something would indicate that there is something significantly wrong with it or that's fundamentally broken. Power Rangers is not fundamentally broken at this particular point, but there are cracks on the surface. There are some issues that I think for the longevity of the franchise do need to go ahead and change. And yes, the franchise has been around for 23 years now, and there is longevity in it. But is it going to survive the next 23 years? Are we going to be able to get to the 25th, the 30th, the 40th anniversary of this franchise? Is that something we're going to do with the way it's going now? Because we do know the first 10 years were sustainable. The Disney era was not as sustainable with the changes they made to the programming. When Neil Saban took over, they had to make certain changes to keep up with the way things are. And of course, everybody has to make changes to the way the fans are going to react to that one way or another. So again, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the changes that I would make to, I guess, go ahead and make a more perfect show, if you will, to help its sustainability, its viability within the market, and really just things that I would like to go ahead and see happen. Now, I do want to start off by saying that these are all my opinions. These are things, a hypothetical situation that may not ever happen. If I win the lottery and the jackpot is enough to cover the purchase of Power Rangers, then they will become reality. But until that point, it's all speculation, and most of all, it is opinion on my part. And of course, your opinions may differ, but I will do my best to explain why I'm making these particular choices and why I think they're going to be good for the franchise overall. I'm also going to be basing this off the assumption that in a hypothetical situation, I would own Power Rangers completely, everything about it, and I would have the financial backing to it. Because frankly, I think a lot of these changes could be made to the franchise now if Hayao Saban actually gave a damn and decided to implement changes like this, because he obviously has the financial backing, because as I've said once before, Saban has the money, but they're still doing it on the cheap. Imagine what they could do if they could actually invest some real money into the product. Also, the situation that I'm bringing up here on how I would fix the franchise will not affect anything regarding Ninja Steel or the upcoming film, mainly because those are already in production. I have no idea how they're going to go ahead and turn out exactly, so I'm not even going to go ahead and make any type of speculation that would affect them, because again, at this point, they don't technically exist at this point yet. And with the with the exception of one instance here, I will not be talking about the merchandising. So this isn't going to be how I would change the toys or how I would change the marketing or anything like that. Well, specifically the merchandising. Marketing is a different thing, of course. But merchandising will not be covered in this because, as you guys know, I already told you what I would do to make things better on the Bandai side. This is primarily for the creativeness of the show, the creative aspect of production, all that good stuff is what it is. Okay, so with all that out of the way, without further ado, these are the things I would go ahead and change in no particular order, and I really just kind of thought these up this afternoon. Didn't give them too much of depth into them, but really these are things just came off the top of my head, like this is what they need to do, and this is what I would do in that situation. So, how I would fix Power Rangers. First, I would get it off Nickelodeon. I would take it off that channel altogether and I would change it to another platform. Specifically, I would change it to Netflix because I really like what Netflix is doing with their original series, with their programming, and the fact that you can watch all the episodes anytime that you want. Don't have to deal with rebroadcast or syndication or edited for time or anything like that. Just as a quick aside, if anybody's actually watched the Dino Charge episodes, you'll actually notice that at the tail end of the act break, there'll be a little action snippet, and then that will be repeated or refilmed in a different way for the beginning of the next act, which that's just wasting valuable time in seconds, but that's a need of syndication, particularly when you have commercials coming up. But with the way that the market's going, you're not going to have commercials for very long, I think. And formats like Netflix, where something like that, where commercial breaks are going to be the thing of the past, you need to move. You need to get rid of that. You need to change it. You need to move the platform. You need to take it off Nickelodeon because that's going to get rid of a lot of the restrictions that the program has. Because not only does Power Rangers have to go by the restrictions of broadcast standards and practices, but it has to go through whatever restrictions Nickelodeon has for it, whatever those may be. Now, of course, there's an episode limit thing that I will talk about here shortly, but again, we need to get off of Nickelodeon, get it away from other children's programming, and get on something a little bit more mainstream, something that more people have, because I think there are more people with Netflix than cable at the moment. I could be wrong on those numbers, but get over to that format because that's going to allow much more freedom, a lot more creativity for Power Rangers than being restricted to a children's cable network. If this was early 90s Nickelodeon and maybe it was on Nick at Night, that would be something, but it's not. It's 2016. Power Rangers needs to move to Netflix. Speaking of moving, I would get production out of New Zealand and send it back to the United States. I'd get back in Los Angeles, get back in Hollywood. Don't get me wrong, New Zealand's done what they can. They've got some good actors, they produce some decent seasons and all that, but there are just too many issues, I think, with filming in New Zealand. The talent pool is a little bit smaller, and things just aren't conducive to, again, what the franchise needs. And what does the franchise need? Well, again, the next thing I would do is once you move it back to the U.S., go with union actors. Stop this BS of not paying your actors. Stop this BS of getting people and giving them shitty contracts. Get into the union, get some rules in there, get established talent to come into your program. You're still probably going to get people at the beginning of their career and all that, but union actors, for the most part, have done a few things and are otherwise talented. That's not to say that non-union actors are not talented. That's not the point that I'm making. But you run you run bare chances of getting lucky with somebody who's done some actings, worked with some interesting directors that know what they're doing. And even behind the scenes with production, if you go union on the production side of it too, you get people, again, who've done things. And the whole thing about the unions and non-unions, that's always a sticky situation for me, and one I never fully understood. But my understanding of it, what I do know, is that when you go with union, you usually get experience along with that. And I think that's something the Power Rangers needs, is we don't need people kind of fumbling around. This is their first gig at anything. We need people who are seasoned in one way or another, whether they've been the lead in a television series, whether they've been a supporting actor, actress in movies and feature films. We just need people who are in the union to go forward with this. Okay, also, since we're moving to Netflix, I would say no more 20 episodes a year. I'd say a full 40 to 50 episodes within a calendar year. Let's get back to the way it used to be. And when I say 40 to 50 episodes, we need to get to where we can give a little bit more time to expand out the characters, to where we have more time to introduce them and get them to change from the first episode to the final episode. This works well with Sentai and what they're doing now, and they're doing between like 45 and 52 episodes a season, and they don't have a problem with it. Some seasons more than others, but that's depending on season to season. So I would certainly go ahead and get more episodes within a calendar year. Maybe not pushing it to 60 like they did with the first season of Mighty Morphin, but that's the exception as opposed to the rule. But I think a good 40 to 50 episodes would work as well. But along with that, maybe we can trim down the episodes, but I would extend the length of the episode. Since we'd be going on Netflix here, I wouldn't go with 30-minute, half-hour episodes. I would go with full hour-long episodes. That's what I would do. I would give that format where you have, instead of 22 minutes with commercials, you would have at least 45 minutes with commercials. And again, with Netflix, you can actually go the full hour without having to worry about commercials. I would extend the time of the episode because that gives you more time to actually do stories, because how many episodes of Power Rangers do we have that's all action and no story? Because when Power Rangers at its worst is that they will fill an episode and pad it with action as opposed to padding it with character development. And I think if you can extend it out to a full hour, you'll have more opportunities to do that character stuff, because the action stuff is still rather expensive and you have to fill an hour. Then you actually do things like have people talking to each other, have people undergoing development and change, and you have subplots. Something I think Power Rangers has been missing for a long time is subplots from episode to episode. Yeah, you got the overarching story there, but you don't have many of those like side stories that are going on. They're about character development, the friendship between two people, or the love relationship between two people. If you can extend it out to an hour and get all this extra stuff in there, once all the action stuff is done, film character scenes, get some more dialogue in there, flesh out your characters to where they're not one-dimensional, a true dimension. They are three-dimensional, fully breathing, living characters. Now, there are shows that are an hour long that don't do that with their characters, and that'll go ahead and happen. But I would say in seasons like Dino Charge, you need an hour to flesh out all your characters. Because right now, what are we doing in Dino Charge? We're focusing on the 6 primary Rangers, really 3 of them any given time as far as character development, but we don't get to be with the other characters like Prince Philip, or really get into Ivan's character. We don't get to get into Dr. Morgan's character, because we're focusing on these Rangers. But if we had more time in an episode to dedicate certain subplots and B stories to these characters, there's a lot more that you can go ahead and do with that. The next thing I would say, no more skipping Sentai. If we're going to adapt from the Sentai, we don't need to be damn picky about it. Oh no, these toys didn't sell very well. Let's sell these toys instead. Oh no, children in America don't relate with trains, so let's do ninjas instead because it's cooler and we'll sell more toys that way. That'll be something else I'll get into in a second, but no more skipping Sentai for BS reasons. Unless you have a creative, story-driven reason for skipping a Sentai, it's not something I want to see done. I mean, if for some odd reason, let me just bring this up as a hypothetical, that Kyuranger that's coming up, which is space-themed, is going to be somewhat better than Zyuohger, but somebody goes in there and says, we could do this Minecraft Power Rangers thing, or we could do space stuff. But you know what? That new Star Wars movie's coming out this year. Let's do that instead to promote space themes and cross-market so people would get interested in it. No, who cares about cubed animals anyway? If that's the logic you're going to go into, then don't even bother. That, to me, if you came to me with something like that, like, screw you, we're not going to do that, because I don't like how they did that. Again, the whole reason they did Dino Charge instead of Go Buster, other than toy sales, presumably, is because Jurassic World came out, and they want to capitalize on kids liking dinosaurs. Well, I have news for you folks. Jurassic World came out a while ago now, and kids are always interested in dinosaurs. So the reason that you moved up to Dino Charge is no longer valid, and when history is all said and done, nobody's going to sit there and think, oh yeah, I remember Dino Charge came out the same year as Jurassic World. What great marketing they did for one another. No, that's... Yeah, skipping Sentai to me for bogus reasons like that is stupid, and I don't think that that should be done unless there is, again, a creative way. I mean, if you were in Saban and saying, you know what, I looked at the footage here for ToQger and the footage for Ninja, and I really think we can do more with the Ninja stuff because I'd like to have this dynamic of the brother-sister relationship and make the Red Ranger Japanese and explore Japanese culture. If you could explain that to me as a story, as opposed to, doing something with ToQger, I'd be like, go for it, let's skip it, because I think we can get more out of this footage from a story perspective. That's how I would put it. Next thing I would do is I would make the shows more serialized in nature. Now, again, there is a degree of this going on in Power Rangers, but I really want it to be where if you miss a single episode, you're going to be completely lost. I know that sounds counterintuitive to a lot of people because a lot of people will start a series from the first episode, from whatever episode that they happen to be channel surfing on. But first of all, it's a different age. If there's a new show coming on and it's on Netflix, nobody's going to go there and say, hey, let's watch episode 17. I mean, how many of you went to Jessica Jones when it first came on Netflix say, oh, Jessica Jones, let's start at episode 6? Nobody did that. Nobody did that. And if you did, you're an idiot. I'm sorry to say, if you watch Jessica Jones for the first time and you decide to go to episode 6 when it's on Netflix and you can watch all the other episodes anytime you want, you're just being an idiot for that. We're no longer in the era where you're going to skip on the channels, you happen to find something, and you start picking it up from that particular episode. In a world where we have Netflix and easily accessible DVDs and YouTube and wikis and all that other stuff, there is no reason why we can't have serialized television shows for shows that deserve it, and Power Rangers is one of them. I want it to be that if you ended up on episode 29 of Power Rangers, whatever Zyuohger adaptation is, you'll be like, what the hell's going on here? I gotta go all the way back to the first episode to see what the hell's going on. Because I really kind of hate episodic nature shows. Yes, it worked for Mighty Morphin. Yes, it worked for other seasons. But I really like building on the consequences of each particular episode that will lead you into the other. That's one of the things I did like about Operation Overdrive, and as it has been pointed out, that's not true episodic nature because there are no actual consequences that happen from those events. The idea that you're leading into the next episode based on the events from the previous is intriguing to me. So if we can take what Operation Overdrive did and refine it to its pure form, then I think, if we could have done that for Operation Overdrive, I think a lot of people would have enjoyed it a lot more and wouldn't think of it as such a bad season. But again, moving forward for what we're going to do at Power Rangers, make it more serialized because, again, the platform you would put it on requires that you really kind of do that because, again, I don't think episodic shows like that are going to be around for much longer. There will always be a niche for them, but I think the way television and entertainment is moving, that's what you need to do, because even movies are like that. No one went into Captain America Civil War without seeing the previous movies, and if you did, again, you're an idiot, because you don't watch film number 12 out of an entire series and that's where you start. I mean, again, in this age you can't do that. And don't correct me if it's 12 or not. I really don't know. I've lost count of the movies because they're not numbered. And I'm getting so lost in the MCU right now. It's crazy. Okay, so what's the next thing I would do? Okay, next I would do is I would hire experienced writers. This again goes with the kind of union thing. Now, all credit to writers like Chip Lynn out there, Mitt Baumick, and so forth and all that. You guys are doing a great job. But I think we need to bring in people who are more familiar with superheroes in general, writing the types of stories that we need for the show. Again, the serialized kind of thing, the character building dynamics and so forth, and something for the long haul. Now, I don't know who the primary writers are for comics and other superhero properties right now, but I would try to bring in people like, maybe a Joss Whedon. Excuse me, maybe a Joss Whedon out there. Because he's written for comics, he's written for superhero television, he's written for superhero movies. He's a guy who knows what he's doing. He's like, candidate number one for writing that kind of stuff. Now, could you get him? Obviously you could. Depends if you make it worth his while and it's a project that he's passionate about, much like the Avengers was a project he was passionate about. So was, I think, Firefly, Buffy, so forth and all that. But get people who are familiar in this genre. Get a staff of writers, get a head writer that's going to be in charge, that has worked in this kind of stuff, and you can get another group of writers in there. The rest of you guys, maybe a few new guys, people who are veteran, seasoned in television and all that. You just got to get somebody to lead that writing room to say, hey, we're making compelling, thoughtful, interesting stories here out of these superheroes. I've done it before. It can be done. This is how we do it. Now, how do we do it for this show? How do we make, this interesting for people in this context? So absolutely find people out there who know what they're doing, who've written good stories, won awards or are respected by their peers in the industry, get them into the writer's room, and also get people who are up and coming, people who you can tap early in their careers, or people that still need to kind of prove themselves. Have a good mixture in there, but have somebody leading that writing room who's done it before, knows what they're doing. Again, Joss Whedon is the only name I can think of at the moment because, again, I'm not Linkara, so I don't know too much about comic books, but again, I'm sure you guys could probably name me a couple that would be good for that. Okay, something else I would do. I would no longer allow Bandai to call any shots. Now, what do I mean by that? I would not let Bandai dictate to me what to put in the show. Because here's the thing, there are a lot of elements in Power Rangers that I suspect, whether it's fact or not, were put in there to sell toys, okay? The metallic armor, the Wild Force Rider, the Samurai armored forms, the 16 different modes that the Dino Charge Rangers use when going into the cockpit, the swords that they're transformed when they're in the cockpit for the Dino Charge mode. There are just so many examples of toys being shoved in there. Look, think of Wild Force. Think of the Wild Force Jungle Blaster shooter thing. Something that was introduced for like one episode and like used for one episode. Again, just to introduce a toy in there. Because I know Bandai's given some financial backing into it, which was the thing that happened in Forever Red, but I'm not going to let them call the shots. If they say, hey, we have this new toy we want you to promote into the episode, I would be like, what's the story behind it? Why should we put it in there? Because what I suspect is happening with right now at Bandai is like, we have this new toy, put in, somehow find a way to advertise it. And I would be like, no, you're not going to go ahead and do that. Because I think naturally what should happen is that the toys should come naturally from the show. You write the show for the story you want to tell, and if something is worth making a toy out of, let the toy company watch and go, that would make a great toy, let's make that. Which is why I'm upset of all these collectibles, because they're obviously designed to make toys. Very rarely do they actually have a story function. The Beast Batteries have a story function. The Shurikens have a story function. The engine cells, okay, they have a story function. The power spheres from Ninja Storm Hurricane, they don't really have a story function. They're just there to sell you more stuff, okay? That's the kind of thing that bothers me, and when Bandai pushes it on people, I think that's even worse. So if I was writing Power Rangers, I would say, nope, you're not calling the shots. If you want a toy advertised, give me a story reason for it to be in there. Because I'm just not going to willy-nilly put some crap in there just to satisfy your bottom line. We're trying to make something entertaining for people while making money at the same time. And if it's successful enough, they'll buy the toys. You don't need to make 16 different versions of the same damn dinosaur with different color variations to make money. Okay? I'm actually surprised they haven't introduced any of those Zords into Dino Charge, but then again, it's cheap, so what are you going to go ahead and do? Because again, I just hate having to see the toy, and it's obviously used for marketing purposes. I mean, now things like Battleizers I'm okay with, because that's kind of a staple of the series, and there usually is a good story that's tied into it. Shane's Karma being the best example right there, or the search for the keys in Lost Galaxy, and we had to confront Astronema's past. Those are good examples. I mean, they're put in there, and of course, both Battleizers are used within the series to significance. Primarily, that's how they defeated Trakeena in Lost Galaxy, point-blank range from the Battleizer. So, again, good story potential right there. But again, Bandai is no longer calling the shots on what is or is not in the show. I wouldn't deal with that crap. Okay, next thing I would do, and this has to do more with kind of a retcon, is I would retcon it that Megaforce is non-canonical. So for those of you who actually watched my video on my crazy Megaforce fan theory, go ahead and watch that again if you haven't or need a refresher. But basically my whole premise there is that Megaforce was an elaborate simulation to train these Rangers to become Power Rangers. So I go into more detail into the video there. But the reason that I believe that, or that's what my theory is because there's so much contradiction in Megaforce, from the locations, the Zords, the people, the Rangers, the past Rangers being made to look like idiots, the current Rangers being made to look like idiots, just people not understanding things, how you got Mr. Burley who believes in cryptozoology and believes in aliens, yet aliens exist. You have an alien invasion of Earth, but it's not really an invasion. There are no consequences from it that are actually happening, turning into Sentai Ranger teams that make no sense. I can go on, and I did in that video. So the best thing to go ahead and do moving forward is to make the series non-canonical. Now, I'm not saying erase and say it never happened, but again, I would go with my theory that's an elaborate simulation, and you can do a story about that. I imagine the story would be, you put these Rangers, you put Troy and the others in the simulation, they don't pass, or they fail, whatever, they're confronted by Tommy or the Mastermind or whoever's behind it, and saying, you failed as Power Rangers, this isn't going to go ahead and work, see you, bye, and deal with the consequences. Have them come to the realization everything they saw was a lie for the last year and a half or however long they were pretending to be in the simulation, that they failed as Power Rangers, that they're not up to snuff, that they're not good enough for whoever it is to be Power Rangers. And then you can write a story of realization and redemption, because one of the things I found irksome about the Megaforce Rangers is that they were too cocky, too sure of themselves, and the problem was they got away with it, that they had so much confidence that they came off looking like jerks, and they were the jerks that succeeded. They were kind of almost like bullies in that way. So have them, knocked down a peg, brought back down to earth, realize they're not good enough, and make a story out of that. So retconning Megaforce in that regard, I think, is beneficial to the franchise as a whole, but then you use it to make story opportunities for these for these Rangers that we've seen before, but now we can see them in a different light and see how they deal with that particular problem. So there's a method to the madness. I'm not saying get rid of Megaforce just because I don't like it. I'm saying get rid of Megaforce because it doesn't make any sense, but then make a story out of it so that we didn't waste your time with Megaforce. Because right now it feels like we've wasted our time with Megaforce, but now let's turn it into something greater, I would say. Now, I said I would refrain from talking about how I would affect merchandising. The Bandai thing is like not letting them do anything, but I would commission Power Rangers reference books and canonical source material. Now, a lot of franchises out there, Star Wars, Star Trek, and a couple of others, have official books, canonical sources, technical manuals, encyclopedias, character bibles, compendiums of episodes. I talked about this in again, a previous video. I would commission the writing of these books to finally dispel rumors, get cast interviews, production interviews, correct spellings of names, galaxy maps, heights and dimensions of the Zords, describing with the science what the power output is, how tall are all the Zords, where are the birth dates for the Rangers, what are they actually up to when the series ends, how far is KO-35 from Earth, how fast does the Astro Mega ship go, what's the relation between the Mer people and Lightspeed Rescue to the Forest Dwellers in Briarwood of Power Rangers Mystic Force. Bring in some canonical sources, give actual facts and dates and information about the history of Power Rangers from both an out-of-universe and in-universe perspective. That way we're not having all these rumors like, well, we think this happened and this might have happened and rumor has it that this happened. No, get people interviewed, have them say exactly what happened, and have it there in black and white for citation on sources, for documents and essays, saying this is exactly what happened in Power Rangers and this is why it happened, so that we can get all that out of the way and there's no more guesswork, and we don't have to keep thinking about what happened in the history of the series, and we can have those official sources and move on with the future. That's mainly what I'm talking about. Okay, next, I would find some way to incorporate Go Buster and ToQger into the Power Rangers canon, into the mythos. Now, I don't know exactly what that would be, but again, I hate the idea that they're skipping the Sentai. I would imagine that we would want to do some sort of tie-in where maybe the Ninja Steel Rangers, since we're talking about space at some point, because again, the intergalactic game show theme that's happening, have the Tokyugers be from outer space, that there's another faction of Power Rangers that somehow do come into the series of Ninja Steel, or what we have with Q Ranger down the line. Or that it becomes a side season, a mini season or something, or there is some sort of Go Buster Tokuger team up thing that we want to go ahead and do. Just anything and everything to try and get them kind of adapted into the franchise. Because I just think that, again, the whole reason they weren't included was bogus, and I think it's interesting to find a way to get these characters in there, get these concepts in there. Because again, ToQger failed as a series because it didn't realize its premise. Now that we understand all the problems that that show had, where it went wrong, we know how to fix it. What Doc Brown saying Back to the Future is the pitfalls, the perils, and the promise of the future. That's the kind of thing you need to look at with the Sentai. Figure out where they went wrong and fix it. You know, make it better. That should be the whole premise behind Power Rangers, is see what they did right and what they did wrong in the Sentai and make it better. That's what needs to go ahead and happen, and I would just like to personally see Go Buster and ToQger incorporated in some way. The next thing I would do is I would make a Power Rangers MCU, if you will. Now, I'm not talking about films or anything like that. I'm talking about the continuity of the television series. Now, here's the brilliant thing about what's going on with the MCU, is that they have the feature films, which is the main thing, but then they have the side series. They have Agent Carter, or they did have Agent Carter. They have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They have Daredevil. They have Jessica Jones. They will have Luke Cage. They're going to have Iron Fist. They're going to have the Defenders. I guarantee we'll have another show in there at some point. And you have this universe mixed, where we know what Thor's doing over here in the films, but this is what Daredevil's doing in his series, and this is what Jessica Jones is doing down the block, and this is what Agent Carter did back in the 1950s. So you have a fleshed out world, and we need something like the Avengers, like the Justice League in the Power Rangers franchise. So what I would propose is we would have 3 simultaneous Power Ranger shows going on either at the same time or at different intervals. First would be the continuing continuity that we have right now with the adaptation of the Sentai. What do I mean by that? So continuing from Dino Charge to Ninja Steel to Ninja Super Steel to whatever the next adaptation is going to be. Continue with the way you've been doing with the series, again with the changes that I've made from the adaptation of the Sentai. So business as usual, just with the changes I would have in place. I would make the second show. This second show would be the Avengers, the Justice League, or the Hexagon Project, if you will, where we actually explore the Power Rangers world and universe from other Rangers' point of view. Because here's the thing, what does Tommy do after he stops teaching at Reefside and he's no longer a Dino Thunder Ranger? What does Jason do after he became the Gold Ranger and everything? What was he doing between then and Forever Red, and what did he do after Forever Red? What's Andros and Zane and Karone all up to? You know, they're rebuilding their planet, or is Karone just off in Marinoid? And how's Marinoid doing? How's the human colony doing? What's the relationship between Earth and Marinoid? Is Marinoid part of some Earth government, or is it a separate nation onto its own? And are they still traveling via the wormhole and all that? What is the status of Aquitar with Earth? Maybe talk about the past of Power Rangers. What was that event that happened 3,000 years ago? You know, what's Merrick's relationship with his ancestors and the Wild Force Rangers of that era, or at least the 5 Warriors? What's Merrick and Zenaku been up to this entire time? What has Lord Zed and Rita been up to since they've turned good? We know Rita's become the Mystic Mother, but how the hell did that happen? And of course, according to the non-canonical video game, Lord Zed has returned after his human form became an archaeologist, and at some point Thrax was born. Let's pick up on where they left off and what they were doing. What's happening to the imprisonment of the A-Squad Rangers? What have they been doing? Are they going to get their term commuted because they were under mind control? What is their prison sentence? What is it like in the prison? What's SPD's role in the future? Heck, since 2025 is coming up, what are the initial steps of SPD to being established in Grum's invasion of the universe? Let's look at a couple of other things. What's Lightspeed Rescue actually up to now that the demons are around? How are they allocating their sources? Are they still helping people in Mariner Bay? Are they still fighting off intergalactic threats? What about the villains we didn't see destroyed? What happened to Prince Gasket and Archerina? What happened to Scorpina? What about the Shadow World? What's the connection there with the Abyss of Evil and these other characters? What happened to Lothor after Mesogog miniaturized him into the size of a doll? There are tons and tons of stories that you can tell of things that we just don't know, and we don't know what will ever happen to them. So I propose that you get a show together where you bring Austin St. John back, you bring David Yost back, you bring Sasha Williams back, you bring Rhett Fisher back, you bring all these actors together, and you do some sort of crossover thing where it is what's happening in the Power Rangers world that's either separate or connected in some way to the main show that you're doing. I would love to see the Wild Force Rangers maybe get together with the Turbo Rangers and see what the robot counterparts are up to on rebuilding Eltar, and maybe the Wild Force Rangers, since they don't have their powers, what are they exactly doing? What did Danny and Max do after they traveled the world? Is Alyssa still teaching? Has Taylor become a major figure within the Air Force? Did they ever reveal their Ranger statuses? There are a number of things that you can explore here by just having an entire series dedicated. Maybe you can do it as an anthology series as to what the Rangers are up to. Like, I think American Horror Story, every season is an anthology of telling each one. So you can do this Extended Universe Season 1, Wild Force, talk about the Wild Force Rangers and what they're doing. Do Season 2, talk about the Dino Thunder Rangers and where their careers are at this point. Season 3, do RPM, how is the world being rebuilt after Venjix and the looming threat that Venjix may still come back. As much as I dislike RPM, I would like to know what happens next. I seriously would. I'd like to know how you rebuild the world and, what Dylan and Tanaya and Summer are all up to after they left. Those are interesting questions that I think deserve follow-up, and you can definitely do within a series. And the third series that I would do would be a true American Power Ranger series. What do I mean by that? No footage from Sentai whatsoever, no designs from Sentai, no robots, no monsters, no nothing. Build from the ground up a American tokusatsu series, not based on anything pre-existing. Make your own Power Rangers, make your own Megazord, make your own villains. Create a series where you're not dependent on anything pre-existing to make your story. Let's see what we can do with our ingenuity to make our own tokusatsu Power Ranger series. Because this is the rallying cry, America! That's what we need. We need to take that rallying cry and put it in the Power Rangers. There's always going to be a place for Sentai. There's always going to be a place for adapting the series, but let's try for once in our lives to take something of our own. Let's make our own theme. Let's say, hey, we want to do it based on bugs in space or something. Let's design our own Red Ranger, what he would look like. Let's make him look like a rhinoceros beetle, whatever. What's his weapon? Let's not give him a sword. Let's give him a hammer or something. Let's design our own Megazord without using any Japanese concepts or anything. Develop something new. China has made their own Sentai series. Korea is developing their own type of Sentai series. These other countries are doing it, but we are not doing it, and we're the ones that are benefiting most from the Sentai footage of any country outside Japan. So let's make our own. Let's see what that ingenuity brings us. What can we do? Let's bring in some designers to come up with American-designed Megazords. And this is not some patriotic, waving the flag, America's greater than Japan. That's not what I'm trying to go ahead and say. Again, there's a time and place for adaptation, but man, after 23 years, let's make our own. Instead of having the Titanium Ranger and the Spirit Rangers as the exception opposed to the rule, let's make them the rule. Let's let's make our own 5 Power Rangers and introduce our 6th Ranger. Because you know what's going to be great about this? There'll be no spoilers from Sentai. Everything will be brand new. It'll be fresh. We won't know what Zords are coming. We won't know what characters are coming. We won't know what plots are coming. We'll be totally surprised. And we have to watch the show to see exactly what's happening. It won't have it ruined years in advance because of magazines and YouTube and commentators on message boards or Facebook. It could be brand new, fresh, and innovative, and you're not tied down to anything. You can make anything you want because, again, and my first show idea for the continuation Power Rangers, still tied down by the Sentai to a regard. Coming up with an anthology of Power Rangers characters, you're still tied down to the previous continuity and what you established with those characters and where they were left off. But then in the third instance, you can make all new characters, still within the same universe as the other shows, obviously, but not tied down by anything specific other than the general Earth, Marinoid, Aquitar, KO-35, SPD comes in X number of years, aliens have always existed, and things like that. But I'm saying a brand new Power Ranger show based on whatever it is that we deem necessary. And finally, the last thing that I thought of was to make it accessible to everyone, not just kids. Again, following the demographics of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and to a degree the DC Extended Universe, people love those movies and not just kids. Yes, you see kids out there playing with the Legos and wearing the shirts and the costumes and buying the toys and everything, but adults love it too. They're lining up to see it. My mother, who could care less about superheroes, likes the X-Men movies because of Hugh Jackman and the way they are in that movie. She likes the Iron Man movies because of Robert Downey Jr. and the stories that are told there. My father, doesn't agree with what's going on in Captain America Winter Soldier as far as the morality of the situation, but he loves the movie and he thinks it's great. This is a man in his mid-50s and everything, and he's, engrossed with it. He was excited about watching Ant-Man, of all things, without even knowing who this guy is. And this is a man who grew up on 60s Batman, for crying out loud. The Marvel films and even the DC films are accessible to everyone. Anybody can go ahead and watch them and enjoy them. The problem with Power Rangers is that it's marketed still to children, and people think it's only meant for children, to where those of us who are adults now are being ridiculed for that, and we can't really enjoy it. And that's a topic for another time, obviously, but find a way to make Power Rangers accessible for everyone in the family to enjoy, where you can make these realistic, gritty movies and whatnot and stuff, or you can make them deeper and make them about something, about philosophy, about an ideal, about ways of life and all that. And, you can still have that one child in the family that's, it's a talking raccoon and a talking tree, but then you have, the mother, it's like, enraptured with the love story, and the brother engrossed with the action, and the father engrossed with the deeper philosophical story that's going on between the characters in the universe. You need to go ahead and have that. Power Rangers will not survive the next 20 years if it's only children that you're marketing to. I firmly believe that. You need to market towards a broader demographic. You need to get everybody invested into this. Now, I imagine that's what the Power Rangers film is going to be doing, because you get people like Bryan Cranston in there to bring in that other demographic, to bring in older audiences, which is exactly what they're aiming for. But I do think that you need to do that with the television show as well, because there's no reason why you can't have a Power Rangers television show, still sell toys and have children, but make it smarter, make it better than what it has been. And again, in my model, having 3 different shows going on at the same time would be a perfect way to go ahead and do that, because you can get 3 different types of audiences. One show for the typical children demographic, one show for the fan demographic, and then the other show for, everybody demographic, because you're creating something new that people can be excited about. Okay, so I think I've pretty much laid out everything there for you guys, and I'd like to think I've been pretty thorough about it. I don't think I've left anything out. If I have, maybe I'll go into a second video and elaborate on some points or give some new points. But I think I've gone over a lot of the things I would go ahead and do with the franchise. I mean, again, this is my point of view and how I would run things, and all based on my opinion of the franchise. And I know that your Power Rangers is different from mine, and you view it in a different way, and there's nothing wrong with that. Definitely, I would encourage you guys that if you have a different opinion on it, leave in the comments below. Tell me what you think of mine. Do I have valid ideas, or do you not like my ideas? And tell me what your ideas are. Make your own video. Let people know about it, because one of the wonderful things about the internet and communication is you let other people know, and things could actually change. I may not ever own Power Rangers, but man, wouldn't it be great if some of these ideas were actually implemented into the series to make them better? And what about your ideas? What do you want to see implemented? How would you fix Power Rangers? What would you want to go ahead and do? Leave a comment below and let me know. And again, let me know what you think of my ideas. I would certainly like to know your opinions on that. So that's all I got, folks, and I've been talking for 45 minutes now, so there it is. That's what I would do at Power Rangers. Tell me what you think. I'm really eager to hear what you all think about that. So until next time, I want to thank you all for listening. Have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.